Broadcasting live from Latebio Koshi. I would like to welcome you to the mother of all talk shows this morning, Alhaji and Alhaji. I will encourage you to be an active part of today's discussion. So I'll be sharing with you my panelists for this morning pretty shortly. But before I do that, let me share with you what the newspapers are carrying this morning, the newspaper headlines. The Mirror. Let me start with the Mirror. And the front page story, the banner headline, Sex in the Open. Choco suffocates undergaze, lesbians affair. And that is on page 3. It starts on the front page of the newspaper, continues on page 3. The other ones, Meet More Women of the Year on Race. It comes to the pictures of Mrs. Marita Bruapia, Opong former Attorney General, Mrs. Teresa Ayode, Ms. Gloria Kufo is the current Attorney General. The Ghanaian Times as VIP launches e-service platform for payment of taxes online. Comes to a photo of the Vice President, Dr. Baumia. And also Ghana, Cuba to cooperate to eradicate malaria. Comes to the picture of President Akufo-Addo. CID boss, others promoted to COP rank. CID boss, others promoted to COP rank. Congratulations to the CID boss. Now COP, Mamiya Tiwa Adodankwa. I understand she's not even 50 yet, but it's already a COP in the Ghana Police Service. PDS suspends load shedding after Great Coast Directive. And also, Upper West Police arrest 12 suspected criminals. The Daily Guide has Baumia troubles NDC. Castro predicted I'll be president. Nana reveals. Comes the photo of President Akufo-Addo, the President of the Republic of Ghana, Miguel Diaz-Canel. Insecticide plant coming to Savelugu. And also Aka Eniji announces $4.5 million training for Ghana. Also on the front page of the Daily Guide is baby kidnapper for mental checkup. Daily Graphic has as its banner headlines, efforts to eradicate malaria, Ghana, Cuba to build plant. President tables proposal for joint venture. Comes a photo of the President Akufo-Addo being shown some of the products of, I think, a company called Labeo Farm. Also on the front page of the Daily Graphic newspaper, public-private partnerships essential for SDGs. VIP states at $20 million compost plant inauguration. And also police hierarchy promotions. Director General CID, others become commissioners. Comes with a photo of this COP, Mamiya Tiwa Adodankwa, who is now COP. Well, so those are the stories on the front page of the newspapers this morning. Well, today's discussion will be centered around the economic management of Ghana, the theories of the government's economic management team as against the revelations by the opposition National Democratic Congress. We've been talking about the measures to stabilize the CD. The Vice President has been speaking and has been, perhaps, maybe I should put it this way, explaining or giving further and better particulars as to what he meant when in 2013 or 2014, when he criticized the NDC's management of issues regarding the exchange rate vulnerabilities. And also they've been announcing a 50% cut on the benchmark values of imports. 50% cut on the benchmark values of imports. And then we'll be taking comments, but particularly we'll be focusing on the education sector, where teachers are made to write examination questions on a chalkboard, or issues or any other issue of national interest. That issue has come up this week very strongly. The Ministry of Education's response has clearly been to call the teachers that they are dramatizing the issue, because the pictures were popping up on social media, and they thought that taking pictures and putting it on social media, that was a bit going too far. In fact, the ministry said that was not new. It was not new for teachers to be writing on chalkboards. Now, that has not been received kindly by the teachers, who said they are not dramatizing anything. That is the situation on the ground that they are just drawing attention to. So that will be engaging our attention that will be our second topic that will be engaging our attention. Now, I'll be joined in the studio this morning for the discussion by Mr. Kwesi Prajinia, managing editor of the Inside newspaper. Mr. Alex Moult is former chief executive officer of the National Petroleum Authority, Honorable Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa, is ranking member on Foreign Affairs Committee and member of Parliament for North Thong. Those will be my panelists for this morning. Let's start the discussion this morning. We are joined for the very first time by Mr. Alex Mould, and he'll be starting the discussion for us. We're talking about the economy in the wake of the issues that have been raised by both the government and the National Democratic Congress. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Pleasure is mine.
How Paul is well?
Everything is good. Okay. It's been quite a week, right? I mean, we have heard from the government what has been done. We've also heard from the main opposition party on what they believe the real situation is in the country. I think for many Ghanaians, the main issue is why is the cedi depreciating that much? And also, why do we have lights going off, whether it's doomsaw or it's load shedding? Why are those things happening when we were promised that this government was resolving these issues? It came on the campaign promise that they would resolve all of these issues. So what has gone wrong? And I think the ordinary Ghanaian needs to know. A lot of figures were spread across by Dr. Baumia saying how good things are. But like he said some time ago, which is a fact, I mean, if the fundamentals are wrong, it will show in the exchange rate. The exchange rate may be a lagging indicator, but it will show definitely. And it's important that we address those issues and what the government should have done or could do to ensure that this doesn't recur. On the power outages situation, yes, we've heard a lot from the Minister of Energy about tie-ins and jargon that many Ghanaians don't understand. The simple question is, do we have enough generation capacity? And if we have enough generation capacity, why don't we have lights? And I think that should have been answered by the government very clearly. They should have communicated early as to what the challenges were going to be and how they were addressing them. I think they were caught with their pants down once again, and I think they're now doing a mop-up exercise to make it work.
Well, so that's Mr. Alex Mould introducing the topic for us. Let me bring you on Honorable Okudzeto-Ablakwa. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Senna, and good morning to the panel. Alex, who it is refreshing to have on the program for the first time, and Comrade Kwesi Pratt. Let me extend warm regards to all the distinguished listeners of Radio Gold, home and abroad, and to thank you very much for inviting me back here. Senna, you have asked us to discuss the economic management of our country within the context of this week's two headline events: the town hall meeting by the economic management team, which was addressed by the Vice President, His Excellency Mahamudu Baumia, and the NDC's response, if you like, which was put together by the Center for Restoration. A budding civil society organization we must commend for the initiative. The Honorable George Lowe and his team ought to be praised for the work they have been doing in that space. I think that this is a fourth in the series of lectures they have organized. Certainly this one, the Functional Executive Committee of the NDC decided to associate with the program fully. And so the General Secretary of the party, the Honorable Johnson Asiedu Nketia, put out a statement in the immediate aftermath of the Economic Management Team Town Hall that the NDC has decided to fully associate with that platform, and that the finance and economy team of the NDC will be present at that forum and will present what, in the view of the NDC, are the facts, the truths, and will dispel the myths, the distortions, the total disregard for evidence-based analysis, as in the view of the NDC was the case when the Vice President addressed the gathering. I would like to set the tone for this discussion looking at the current state of the world. What is clear, Senna, is that Africa is now going through a new era. And that era is being described as the third scramble for Africa. The first scramble for Africa was during the colonial period, where the European countries met in the Berlin Conference and decided to divide Africa amongst themselves. So Germany took its share, Britain took its share, Belgium took its share, France took its share, and all of that. That was the first scramble for Africa. And that period continued all the way to the 1950s and 1960s, when the Pan-Africanists, led by the likes of Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, fought for independence. Ghana became the first country south of the Sahara to become an independent nation, and that inspired many other African countries. Then we had the second scramble for Africa, and that happened during the Cold War era. And you do know that the Cold War era had the Americans and their allies on one hand, the Soviet Union and its allies on the other hand. And so global geopolitics had to acknowledge that context. And if you look at the history of our own Akosombo Dam, how we managed under Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah to secure that, the role of Kaiser, and the delicate balancing act between those powerful blocs, the pro-Soviets and the pro-Americans, leading to the period of detente and all of that. So that was the second scramble. We are now in the era of the third scramble for Africa. And what African leaders ought to acknowledge is that lessons have to be learnt from the first scramble, the second scramble, and so those lessons should influence the decisions that we make in this era. We expect that African leaders will be wiser this time, will be firmer in our negotiations, will be smarter, and will pursue an agenda that improves the lot of our people. Sana, as we speak, the United Nations has reported officially that by 2025, just 6 years from now, Africa will become the most populous continent. Bigger, there'll be more Africans in the world than the Chinese. Now, this scramble for Africa, which I talk about, can be seen in the fact that between 2010 and 2016, you've had not less than 320 embassies open in Africa. This is not happening anywhere else, not in Asia, not in Europe, not in North America. And you are seeing big businesses, corporate entities, the global corporatocracy, as some choose to call them, tend to establish in Africa, to pitch camp here. And the irony is that we see these developments as investor confidence. We are in a hurry to hail these announcements that these countries make. So Nissan is coming here, Toyota is coming here, ExxonMobil is coming here. And we do not look at the reality that there is a scramble for Africa. And so in our economic management strategy, we must come together to see how our economic decisions will be in the best interest of our people. This week in Parliament, we in the minority were scandalized when the majority decided to use their numbers to approve the ExxonMobil deal, which came to Parliament. That deal is one of the worst deals you can see anywhere in the world. Zero corporate taxes for the next 25 years, plus another 5 years if oil discoveries are made. ExxonMobil can remit all their foreign exchange back to America without any restrictions. Even worse, the 5-year tax holidays that we give to companies, which has been the standard, they are getting 10 years. Now, if we continue to sign such agreements with massive tax waivers, import waivers, how do we intend to transform this economy? How do we intend to change the status quo and ensure that this economy works in the interest of the people? Because mind you, our constitution, if you read Article 36 of our constitution, it provides the framework under which our economic policies must proceed. Article 36 of the Constitution stipulates, the state shall take all necessary action to ensure that the national economy is managed in such a manner as to maximize the rate of economic development and to secure the maximum welfare, freedom, and happiness of every person in Ghana, and to provide adequate means of livelihood and suitable employment and public assistance to the needy. These are the imperatives. Article 36(2) stipulates, the state shall, in particular, take all necessary steps to establish a sound and healthy economy, whose underlying principles shall include A, the guarantee of a fair and realistic remuneration for production and productivity, in order to encourage continued production and higher productivity. B, affording ample opportunity for individual initiative and creativity in economic activities and fostering an enabling environment for a pronounced role of the private sector in the economy. It continues all the way to E, which is my favorite. The recognition that the most secure democracy is the one that assures the basic necessities of life for its people as a fundamental duty. The recognition that the most secure democracy is the one that assures the basic necessities of life for its people as a fundamental duty. The question to ask, therefore, is that as our economic management team, led by the Vice President, beat their chests and tout their achievements, what is the reality on the ground? What is the reality on the ground? Have we met this litmus test that the Constitution admonishes us? Have we provided the basic necessities of life for the people? Have we secured the maximum welfare of the people? Later on, our second topic, we'll be discussing the pictures this week that have gone viral. We cannot print examination papers in our education subsector. So teachers are forced to set questions on blackboards. Look at the levels of poverty, the levels of unemployment, the levels of disillusionment. Listen to the youth of our country, the frustration. That is the reality of the Ghanaian economy. And so when those in charge of the management of the economy beat their chests and sing choruses of achievements, you cannot help but to wonder, do these managers of the economy respect the people? What do they take the people for? And so it is important that in this discussion we approach the matters in all sincerity, in all honesty, and to be as realistic as possible. Because the people who we are speaking to know the reality. They feel the reality. They experience the reality. As Bob Marley said, who feels it knows it. So it is not about all the talk. And I couldn't help but agree with a profound statement made by the venerable economist Kwame Pienim, who belongs to the Dankwa Buzia tradition. It is him who said, when the media went to him after the town hall meeting, after Dr. Baumia had spoken, it is him who said that the people don't eat talk, and that the economic management team must focus. They must focus on the reality. The people of this country voted for the New Patriotic Party to come and work. There is work to be done on the ground. Because thus far, all the promises made, virtually all the promises made in the economic sector have not been delivered. The paradise promised has not been delivered. This country is moving in a direction that frightens all of us. And so, I agree with Kwame Pieni that it is important for our leaders to focus on action, to focus on work, and let the work speak for itself. Anytime you see somebody put in charge of a job, talking for well over 2 hours, trying to convince you about your reality, trying to portray a different reality, you must be suspicious ab initio. And that is what many people are saying after that town hall meeting. Now, what are some of the matters that came up? What did Dr. Bawumia say? And I do not need to re-echo the fact that, unfortunately, over the years, Dr. Bawumia, rather sadly, appears to have gained a reputation for peddling untruths. It was Dr. Bawumia who delivered a public lecture some time ago, as you recall, calculated inflation, which included cement. It had to take the Ghana Statistical Service to issue a statement informing Dr. Bawumia that in Ghana's statistical analysis, cement is not a factor. That was an embarrassing episode. It was Dr. Bawumia, as you recall, who said that he was about to launch a GPS technology that even the Americans, the Canadians, the French will come here to learn at his feet as to how he managed to do it. We do know that that GPS technology has been a disaster. And as my good friend Kwame Agboja said, it cannot even help him locate roads in the Upper East region, which were constructed before the end of 2016. You recall what Dr. Bawumia said, that by the end of 2018, all Ghanaians will have a bank account. These days on social media, virtually every week, one false claim or the other of Dr. Bawumia goes viral. Everybody shares it. And Dr. Bawumia, rather sadly, I do not want my vice president to become the butt of all jokes. You remember the promise he made about one village, one dam? What will happen by end of 2017? That has also become the butt of all jokes on social media. So one will have thought that having gone under the radar for a long time, with people using his words against him, that these are the things you said, that if the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you, that anybody can borrow, that Ghana has become a debt-distressed country. We ought to pull the brakes and stop borrowing. Dr. Bawumia's words were being used against him. What he said about fuel increases, for example, his famous tweet that said, I woke up this morning and the fuel prices are up again. This cannot continue. We must get rid of this government. So understandably, Dr. Bawumia was not speaking to the economy for many, many months. So when he resurfaced this week, many Ghanaians expected that the vice president will put out an evidence-based, factual presentation of the state of the Ghanaian economy. But that was not to be the case. At the NDC response, many Ghanaians heard the numerous falsehoods that the vice president peddled. And I do not need to go over all of them, save to pick on a few. You heard Dr. Bawumia say that the Bank of Ghana did not pump in any dollars to shore up the ailing cedi. You heard Dr. Bawumia say that. At the lecture, the Honorable Isaac Adongo and the Honorable Atufosa, using the Bank of Ghana's own accounts of what has been happening with our National Reserve, made a point that some $700 million has clearly been used to shore up the currency. In preparing for this program, Senna, I decided to read the annual public debt report for the 2018 financial year, which was submitted to Parliament on Friday, 29th March 2019, by Ken Ofori-Atta, the Minister for Finance. And the Honorable Minister for Finance submitted this report in fulfillment of the requirements of Section 72 of the Public Financial Management Act 2016, Act 921. And Senna, it will shock you to hear that the Finance Minister clearly contradicts what the Vice President and head of the Economic Management team tells us. And I'll read from page 15 of this report. I'm reading from the Annual Public Debt Report for the 2018 financial year, page 15. The Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta writes, the implementation of the Medium-Term Debt Management Strategy, MTDS, faced significant challenges in 2018 due to external vulnerabilities, which led to investor pullouts from the domestic market. To address the external contagion effect of the sell-offs in emerging countries, which affected the participation of non-resident investors in the domestic market and put pressure on the Ghana cedi against major trading currencies. The approved strategy was redirected to focus on increased government support to the proper functioning of the secondary market. For this, government had to use its buffers to help improve liquidity and stabilize the market, unquote. Government had to use its buffers to help improve liquidity and stabilize the market. A clear contradiction of what the Vice President said. Vice President says that the Bank of Ghana did not intervene because the IMF had tied our hands, so there was no capital injection. We could not fall on our buffers. One of these high-ranking officials is not telling us the truth. Is the Vice President lying to us, or is it the Finance Minister? Because both of them cannot be right. Then, my brother, you also recall that the level of intellectual dishonesty which was at play. You had the Vice President engage in fudging of the figures. So when he wants to make a point to let the MPP era look good, what he does is to do an analysis based on old series and to say that in 2016, Ghana's public debt to GDP ratio was 72%. But now, thanks to the magic wand he possesses, the debt to GDP has come down from 72% to 57%. Now, it is important to point out the levels of dishonesty that the Vice President exhibited. You see, if you are carrying out an analysis based on old series, stick there. And you compare like with like, apples with apples, not apples and oranges. So you do not pick old series when it suits you to portray how terrible the NDC's macroeconomic record is. And then you compare that with your era in new series. And again, I want to refer to page 64 of the Ministry of Finance's document as submitted to Parliament just a couple of weeks ago, 29th March 2019. Page 64. The Ministry of Finance, led by the Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta, does the honorable thing. They provide the table, Appendix 2, and you have the old series and the new GDP series. And the debt to GDP ratios under the new GDP series. 2014, the gross public debt ratio to GDP was 51.2%. 2015, 55.6%. 2016, 56.8%. 2017, 55.6%. And 2018, 57.9%. So that is what you do. You stay in new series. You compare 2016 and 2018. When you do the comparison, you notice that 2016 it was 56.8%. 2018 it was 57.9%. So clearly, the debt to GDP situation now is worse than Dr. Bawumia and the MPP met it. And that point was made strongly by the Honorable Isaac Adongo and others at the NDC forum. Again, if you look at page 62 of the Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta's document to Parliament, there is another table, Appendix 1A, which reveals our gross public debt. And again, contrary to the claims of Dr. Bawumia, this document reveals that the gross public debt, that's when you combine the external debt and the domestic debt, 2016 is stood at 122.26 billion Ghana cedis. By end of December 2018, the public debt, the gross public debt, has shot up to 173 billion Ghana cedis. An addition of some 51 billion. And this is just 2018. we know that there has been a lot of borrowing in the first quarter of 2019. That has not been factored here. The question, therefore, is all the claims about how terrible the President Mahama administration was because it was on a borrowing spree. And as the Honorable Isaac Adongo asked, President Mahama's borrowing can be seen at Terminal 3. It can be seen at the KJTR market, ultra-modern market, the finest market in West Africa, we are told. And that very few markets, even in Africa and the world, can rival the KJTR market. The borrowing can be seen at Circle Interchange, just across from here. Kaswa Interchange, Kumasi Airport expansion, Tamale Airport expansion, Wa Airport, Ho Airport, Fufusu Solar Road, the Accra Regional Hospital, the University of Ghana Hospital, ultra modern, the most sophisticated hospital in West Africa, that they couldn't just open that hospital for us to save lives and to end the no-bed syndrome. That too, they were too competent to just open a hospital. The question, therefore, is, your own document submitted to us in Parliament by the Minister of Finance, the 51 billion cedis you have borrowed, where is the money? Why is it that we cannot see one project, just one project? Just one project. The community day schools we were constructing remain abandoned. So many other projects remain abandoned. Cocoa roads in the western region, Brongahafu region, parts of the Volta region, Eastern Corridor roads remain abandoned. So it is not for want of urgent need of national reconstruction. There is an urgent need to get to work and carry out projects to transform the lives of our people. And yet, 51 billion cedis borrowed, according to page 62 of the annual public debt report for the 2018 financial year. Nothing to show. Nothing to show for all of this borrowing. So, first of all, you tell us that the money is here. Sikano waha. Ghana yaya mobododo, yeti sikaso nanso ye bre. His running mate says that he has been deputy governor before. He knows the money is here. The money is in Ghana. The money is here. So, the first point to note is that your claim that the money is here, we don't need to be borrowing that much. You have broken that. You've abandoned that. Then, okay, fine. Now, let's grant you've seen the reality. So you've gone a borrowing. And you even now celebrate the borrowing. When you borrow and come, you call it a hat trick and you call Kenke parties at your ministries and celebrate. Setekpe, Alex Mode and co, who were in an economic management team earlier, they were not that generous, if I put it that way, to call us to parties anytime they borrowed. So, you have borrowed. The second point to note is that now that you have borrowed, what have you borrowed for? What are you using the money for? The Ghanaian people ought to know. And as the Honorable John Jinapo pointed out, Senna, it is important to recall that due to the investments made in the energy sector, and here you must commend the likes of Alex Mode, Honorable Boa, Kwabena Donko, and all of those who were in there, who served in the energy sector. President Mahama was managing with just a paltry 900 million cedis every year, or as at 2016. President Akufo-Addo, due to the investments made, the 10 field, is getting in excess of 2.7 billion. So you add that to the loans that we are accumulating, and yet we don't see what you are doing with those funds. And as Honorable John Jinapo pointed out again, ESLA, the energy sector levy, secured for you 3.5 billion cedis annually on the average. Every year is available. That too, we don't know what it is being used for. And what we are seeing, Senna, is that ECG, Gridco, and the energy sector SOEs who made profits in 2016 under President Mahama have been managed so badly that they are now making losses. That the current doomsday situation, I listened to the Honorable Alex Mould on PM Express a couple of days ago, and he made a point about how this is a financial challenge. So the sector has been so badly mismanaged that we are not able to raise the needed resources, the letters of credit, to buy crude and to power our power plants. That is the sordid state. This economy is clearly in crisis. If you doubt that this economy is in crisis, get a copy of the report of Parliament on the formula for the disbursement of the National Health Insurance Fund 2019. Page 10 of the report. This is what the committee, the Health Committee of Parliament, writes. Included in the release of funds amounting to 358.85 million Ghana cedis to the Ministry of Health was an amount of 163.66 million Ghana cedis paid to nursing trainees as allowances. The committee was displeased about the payment and requested the NHIA never to use NHIF for such purposes. Only last week, Daily Graphic front page, hospitals collapsing. We saw the precarious state of the Cape Coast Regional Hospital. Claims are not being paid. The sustainability of the health insurance scheme is at stake. And yet, this government had to borrow 358 million cedis to support the health ministry, out of which 163. So when we argued that, look, let's have student loans move in to save our nursing trainees and teacher trainees so that you get student loans. You are now tertiary institutions. So we achieve equity at the tertiary level so that you can be guaranteed employment when you graduate. They bastardized the reforms, called us names, said we were wicked and cruel, managed to get the trainees to back them. Look at where we are. Hardly a week passes without demonstrations. Now, because you are taking money from health insurance and from Get Fund to pay allowances, and you have nothing left to pay them when they are ready to be employed. What you are doing, therefore, is that you are putting blockades, licensure exams, national service. People who have done an out section already, have gone to the field already. You are compelling them to go carry out national service because you cannot employ them. You don't have the money to pay them. And as the Honorable Isaac Adongo points out, if you look at goods and services and salaries alone, it's taking 94% of our revenue. That is how precarious the situation is. Okay. And if you will allow me.
Yeah, a few minutes then, because you have to wrap up for me.
Yes. There are matters which the Honorable Isaac Adongo raised, which all of us must be concerned about. If you look at page 23 of the Honorable Adongo's lecture, he reveals that the Euro bonds we have been borrowing, all these Euro bonds that we raise, the utilization must worry all of us. In 2018, we raised 750 million, spent only 119 million US dollars on capital expenditure. We used $631 million on consumption. This is worrying. This is worrying. 631 million is on consumption. And remember that these are loans that we will be paying back soon, the next 10 to 30 years. The $2 billion we raised recently, for which there is so much partying, $390 million it is projected in the 2019 budget. Only 390 million will be spent on capital expenditure. 1.61 billion on consumption. Now, what this means is that you are going for these expensive financial instruments only to spend them today, now. We are not investing them thinking about tomorrow. Because you see, when you invest in capital expenditure, you create jobs. You revive your local construction sector. As we speak, contractors are complaining. They don't have jobs to do. So they are laying off workers. They are selling their equipment. That is the surest way to spur growth. Okay. To expand your GDP and to create opportunities for your people. However, we are spending all our funds, the monies we are raising, on just consumption. The other matter, Senna, which must worry all of us, is the revelation that the Honorable Adongo made about how much we have spent so far on the so-called banking sector cleanup. And you have heard that they are moving now to the savings and loans, the microfinance institutions and other finance houses. The table provided, Honorable Adongo's table 10, page 42 of his lecture, reveals that if you combine the banking sector and the other financial institutions, we are spending 20.46 billion cedis on this cleanup. And in the next 10 years, we are supposed to cough up 40.48 billion cedis as payback. Now, there are two categories in this whole banking sector crisis. You have those who engage in pure criminality. What is happening to them? Why is nobody being prosecuted? Is it because of their status or proximity to the powers that be? Because we all heard the reports. We read the assessment reports. Then you have the other category which is clear political victimization. If you owe Unibank 1 billion cedis, you don't pay them, and yet you say they are insolvent, you close it down. You owe GN Bank 2 billion cedis, you close it down. How do you convince us that that is not going after your opponents? When you close down Heritage Bank, saying that the key shareholder does not meet the fit and proper test, the bank was too exposed to one person. And yet there's another bank that survives when the exposure, 99% is for one man, and the other 1% is for his wife. He survives. How do you explain that? So I think that people should take their time and read the Honorable Isaac Adongo's 63-page lecture.
Honorable, and I have to move on to my
I just need 1 minute. I just need 1 minute. If you
a minute,
just 1 minute. You see, there has been this claim all over, and I think that is what when the MPP communication team met, they were told to just try to, go after the character of Honorable Isaac Adongo, which I think is so unfortunate. Address the issues he raises. But this business of wanting to denigrate him, looking at his credentials and all of that, I mean, it's most unacceptable and condemnable. The other claim is that Honorable Adongo does not have any policy prescriptions. He does not provide any alternatives in his lecture. That is not true. Page 62 of his lecture, he has recommendations and way forward. He does not list 1, 2, 3, 4, 9. 9 recommendations on the way forward. And if you allow me to read them, can I read them quickly?
That's
because it's very important. Because they're saying that it was just raving and ranting and just comedy. And 1, he states, improve fiscal performance through revenue mobilization. This should include improving compliance and efficiency in revenue administration. 2, reprioritize public expenditure to increase allocation to the capital budget to prop up the ailing private sector. 3, realign monetary policy to stem portfolio reversals, whilst making efforts to increase Ghanaian holding of government debt instruments. 4, develop a comprehensive program of trade facilitation to improve trade and industry in a way to support industrialization and not import-dependent distributive trade. 5, slow down on the rate of growth of the public sector to create fiscal space. 6, review the banking sector reforms to focus on hand-holding and helping challenge financial institutions and not collapse them. 7, cut down on the size of government and channel the savings towards improving social protection and infrastructure development. 8, fulfill your campaign promise to abolish import duty on intermediate goods. And 9, reverse the deteriorating economic and business operating environment. These are recommendations. So people have not heard him fully and properly. They have not read the lecture. And they say, he just went to engage in a half and puff. And then you hear some people say that, this kind of talk must be condemned. And that he was seeking to run down the vice president. The vice president, when he calls President Mahama, for example, the incompetent one, that's okay. Nobody says that he is engaged in the politics of insults. You see, the hypocrisy must stop. And I think that, as His Excellency John Dramani Mahama said, you can engage in all the lies and the propaganda, but the reality of the people's lives will expose you. That profound statement sums up the state of our economy and all the talk that the economic management team is engaged in. I'm told that they are in London today continuing with the with the talk. I do hope they will listen to their own leading member, Kwame Pienim, who says that the people don't eat words. You have to focus on working, on delivering. Unless you've given up, that you have no solutions. Okay. And so we should just count down to 2020 and kick you out.
Honorable, thank you. A couple of messages on our PAB MCGH platform on Facebook. And this one from Magdo says, the truth is only one. Now that Mr. Adongo has exposed Bawumia, Mr. Ohiniba of Adum will come and do the dirty job for Bawumia, but he won't work. That's from Magdo, sends that from Alajo. Kim Farouk says, a reduction in benchmark values is not a reduction in import duties. A reduction in import duties proper will have to go to Parliament for approval. It cannot take immediate effect from an instruction from Baumia's lips. The benchmark value was not an act of Parliament like the import duties. King Farouk Kasua sent that. Badasu Emmanuel sends this one from Nkawie in the Ashanti region, says the president, having realized the problems bedeviling the economy, asks his finance minister to call for a bipartisan dialogue to resolve the problems. Barely a week after, his own vice president comes to tell us that the economy is resilient and that they have performed better. Between the president and his vice, who is being truthful? The Wale Adam Smith has just thrown a spanner in the spokes for the president and the finance minister. Musa Abato and Kumasi says, Sena, Dr. Baumia argued that when you are unable to walk doesn't necessarily mean that you have a broken leg. And replying to his critics about if the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. But he failed to think logically that the effect of being unable to walk, whether it's broken leg or not, the bottom line is that you are unable to walk. However, I hope and pray Dr. Baumia will use 9 policy alternatives given by Adongo to solve problems facing the economy, because his own 170 questions sitting on his table cannot arrest the CD. You can do all the lies and the propaganda with the economy you like, but the reality of the people's lives will expose you. Simple logic. Asilfi Tetefio Benjamin says, Senna, good morning to you and your panel. First of all, I thank Honorable Isaac Adongo very much, and all the guests who exposed Mr. Adam Smith the most, and his president, Nana Addo, and the economic management team for their lazy work they are doing for Amagana, and now for all their propaganda they are doing in governance today. The life of the Ghanaian in their fundamentals is exposing them. And I'm proud to be an NDC branch secretary. I love to be part of the great party of the NDC. Charles Nyame and Asamankese says, so now the state of Ghana's economy is the government word against the people's word. Okay, we'll leave it to the reality of the people's life to be the judge. Thanks to Honorable Adongo for exposing the deceits of this NPP government and making economy so easy for the ordinary Ghanaian to understand. At least now they know which government is to blame for the current untold hardships. Well, a couple more messages in there. Kwamina Acidity from Ahafo Achingsua says, Baumia is an economic management team, has caused financial loss to a state, wasted $20 million on the taxpayers' money on the town hall meeting. Alidu Mash says the NPP has no moral right to compare themselves on electricity matters in the country at all. A.U. Farouk in Tamale says, good morning to you, my humble and to your able panelists. The NDC has exposed the lies and propaganda of the NPP. We will no longer accept the NPP's economic management team because of their indecisive tactics. A couple of you have been complaining about our broadcast on the radio channel. Our attention has been drawn to it. We'll get the technical department to look at it for you. Ebokwashi says, my question is, did all the people in the economic management team know each other, that they could have met on the quiet if they really had solutions to our problems, but had to use a public forum because they want to throw dust into our eyes? But what they forget is the Ghanaian electorate is now wide awake and can read through the lines. Evangelist Adisu Kuwada Sefaji says, Sena, the education sector of Ghana has been destroyed by the NPP in the year 2000 when we were told that students should not be repeated following the F-Cube. And that was because government was paying fees of basic education. Now in 2016, when they come with free senior high school, they give teachers students as west as aggregate 54 to teach in senior high schools, food without paying teachers who have been promoted since last year. And those of us that just graduated from the university to be upgraded has also become trouble. Please kindly make the text messages or comments as clear as possible, and because it makes it difficult for me to read through. Simon Achufoga says, "Good morning, Senna and your able panelists. Once again, I'm also doing the watching and listening at the expense of my sleep. It's very useless putting up a building with a very weak foundation. That is what is happening in the educational sector in Ghana now. The Nana Bawumia government and its cohorts are taking Ghanaians to the darker days and total abyss. It's very shameful to see teachers writing examination questions on the chalkboard while other countries are using computers. The Ghanaian populace needs to be blamed because the ministers, the directors, the politicians are not having their children in wars in those category of schools." Let me bring in Mr. Pratt.
Well, I recall that in 1986, I was thrown into prison for apparently saying that all of these statistics and figures being thrown at us constantly and so on are absolutely useless if they do not reflect the real lives of our people. There's a matter of record. By the year 2000, same statistics, same figures, inflation was running at 46%. Money supply had gone up by 50%. 300 or more state enterprises had been completely disabled. 500,000 workers in the public sector have been laid off, and so on. Now, 26 years later, our politicians are still dancing on our heads and throwing figures at us. I mean, this morning, I had a chat with some young men in Musuku. They had come to my house. And they were telling me that, what is all the debate about? What are the parties saying? We don't understand. The parties are not communicating. Nobody understands what they're saying. And they're so busy throwing figures. Look, what is the essence of good governance? What does economic management, good economic management mean? What must it mean? They can mean only very simple things. One, that the people of Ghana, on whose behalf presidents work, who employ the presidents, who employ the economic management teams and so on, can get access to potable water. That we can eat in order to sustain our lives. That our children can go to school so that we can pass on knowledge from the generations, so that knowledge can be developed for our future development. Economic management must make life simpler for us. It must fill the potholes, which are looking like trenches in Domikwabenya. You understand? Economic management must result in the rehabilitation of the Eastern Corridor roads. Good governance must lead to a situation where we no longer have Dumso. I hope you understand what I'm saying. So, when these figures are thrown at us, what do they expect us to do? In any case, there's a high level of dishonesty in this discourse. And I will explain. Quite apart from my position, which I've held all throughout my adult life, that these statistics don't tell us much because they are averages. You understand? So, for example, when you are told that the per capita income has risen by a certain percentage, it does not necessarily mean that the people in this country are getting higher incomes. For all you know, 1% of the population can get some monumental increases in their income, that it would change the figures dramatically. But the reality is that the vast majority of our people will still continue to languish in poverty and misery. You understand? So if you look at the figures as statistical averages, they tell you nothing. You understand? In any case, one very simple thing that all of us know but refuse to admit is that in statistics, output has always been dependent on input. You know, one figure which everybody is bandering about is the rate of inflation. Do you know what has happened? Since 2016, the method for calculating inflation has changed. So when anybody tells you that inflation is reducing, ask them how they came to that conclusion. By the end of 2016, the things that go into the basket for calculating inflation was around 250, 260. Today, the same basket, the things that go into the basket for calculating inflation is around 420. So you can't get the same results. Now let's go back to 2016 and put 420, 450, 430 items into the basket and calculate inflation. You may find that we would be in single digits. Today, let's put the 260 items that went into the basket for calculating inflation and calculate inflation, and you may find that we are in the double digits. So this is plain dishonesty. People we have elected to look after our life, to manage the national purse, are engaged in trickery. They are tricking us. You understand? Through manipulations and so on. The other thing that we are hearing a lot about is the so-called debt to GDP ratio. My goodness. We have rebased the economy. When you rebase the economy, these figures change. And sometimes I don't understand some of the people even in opposition. The people are throwing at you debt to GDP ratios and so on. What is so difficult about using non-rebased figures in calculating that for now? I mean, there's no better way of exposing the reality than using the same methods to do the calculation. And yet we accept these figures as given. You know, we accept these figures as given. And these figures tell us next to nothing. You understand? So we can do that for all of the figures. And if we do that for all of the figures, you will see the lies in the figures that are being thrown at us. Sana, what is the reality? The reality is that in 2 years, petroleum prices have gone up by 30%. If I lie, tell me. Petroleum prices have gone up by 30%. That is the reality. I have not done any survey on food prices. But Joy FM has done a survey on food prices. Google their website. Some food prices have gone up by as much as 100%. So all these figures, what do they mean when you can demonstrate that something that you used to buy 2 years ago is now has doubled its price? I hope you understand what I'm saying. So all of this, what does it really mean and so on? You understand? Now, I am totally shocked. You understand? We are running an economy in which total government revenue, if you put all of the money that government makes through taxes and so on, at the end of the month, at the end of the year, if you pay public sector workers, if you pay them finish, listen to me very carefully. and you pay interest on loans and so on, nothing is left. And the people who are managing this economy are constantly telling us that they've done so well. They are performing magic and so on. When they should actually be telling us that, look, we are sinking. And that where we are, if everybody does not rally to the cause and contribute ideas and so on and make sacrifices, this country will collapse. So instead of courting public sympathy, courting public cooperation and so on, they are telling us not to worry, we should go to bed. They are doing wonders and so on. I mean, incredible. But that's what we are being told. This is the state of the economy. Now listen, I've heard President Akufo-Addo over the years, especially since he became president. And sometimes he says certain things and I sit there and say, well, that is the right approach, that is the right direction. The next morning, they are doing something totally different from what he has said. And I'm sitting there and saying, where is the confusion coming from? One of the talk is about developing a Ghana without aid, Ghana beyond aid, and so on. Good idea. But you see, if you ask me to make a choice between aid and debt, I will always go for aid. You understand? Aid, supposedly, is a grant, it's free. Debt suffocates you, kills your economy, and so on. So we are talking about Ghana beyond aid, and we are piling on debts to suffocate us. And I just wonder, all of us are talking about the need to move away from an import-driven economy to an export-inspired economy and so on. That's what we are saying. And then we are so happy boasting about the fact that we are actually reducing taxes on imports. What imports? Is it the chicken which we can produce here? Is it the tomatoes that we can produce here? What imports? If we are reducing taxes on imports, I would have thought that we would reduce taxes on machinery needed for agricultural takeoff. We reduce taxes on inputs needed to give a boost to industrial production and so on. Blanket reduction on taxes on imports, even if that is true, because I'll come to that, will further sink this economy and destroy everything that government itself claims is doing and so on. Now, there's something else which simply baffles me. I mean, that one, I have tried, I can't understand. His Excellency Alhaji Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia has been creating the impression that they're doing something new to the economy of Ghana. When in reality, since they assumed office, the program they have pursued is the NDC program. Check. Why? When they came, we are already implementing an IMF program. They had promised in opposition that they were going to get out of the IMF program and so on. They came and extended it for another year. So instead of a 3-year program, we had a 4-year program. They claim to have exited that program last Tuesday. And if you remember, this IMF deal was based on the so-called Senchi consensus. You remember? So that is the program we have been implementing. There is no original program that they are implementing. Now, if you are implementing the same program that the NDC took to the IMF, and so on, where is the boost coming from? Where is your program? Where is the boost coming from? I mean, incredible. Incredible. But you see, I think that sometimes some of these leaders think that we are all yo-yos. You know, we are all idiots. We will take everything they say. You know, so they just come and tell us any story. Any story. They themselves cannot even convince themselves that what they are telling us is sensible. And yet, they will tell us. Incredible. Listen, something else happened. At the town hall meeting, first of all, let me make the point that this was no town hall meeting. This was a controlled meeting. I mean, on the morning of the so-called town hall meeting, I heard announcements to the effect that 500 institutions and individuals had been deliberately invited to attend this meeting. And that those of us who had not been invited, if we wanted to go and take part in the meeting, we should go to the Ministry of Information for permission. So this is not town hall meeting. This is a controlled meeting, you know. And then we are told that this is the first time it has happened. Hey, babe. These claims, why? Why? You haven't forgotten that former President Kufuor used to get up and go to community centers and so on and meet people and answer questions about all aspects of his governance. Have you forgotten? He was even the president, or not the vice president, not economic management team and so on. And yet we are told that this is the first time it has happened. So what? Yeah, let us even assume that is the first time. How meaningful was it? How did that contribute to our understanding of the Ghanaian economy and its challenges and so on? And then we are told that, look, they have reduced the benchmark value for assessing customs duties on imports. I was sitting behind the television when I heard. I said, what does this mean? And then instantly some people started jubilating and claiming that duties have been reduced. How? Do you know what the benchmark value is? The benchmark value, let me explain it this way. You know, you see this bottle of water. You import this bottle of water and bring it into the country. And then you quote a value of 1 cedi per bottle. Customs has a standard below which it will not go in assessment of duty. That standard, or what is called the indicative price, you understand, is what is known as the benchmark value. So if the benchmark value is 1 cedi, and you come and you say that what you imported is 1 cedi, no problem. Nobody is going to apply benchmark value. They will value your goods on the basis of 1 cedi. If you say it is 2 cedis, even the better. Nobody is going to go to the benchmark value. But when you come and you say that the bottle is 50 pesos, and customs doubts your claim, there's some doubts about the figures you are quoting, then they go back and use the benchmark value. So reducing benchmark value does not automatically lead to a reduction of duties. You understand what I'm saying? So this is a Kwaku Anansi story. You know the Kwaku Anansi, the famous Kwaku Anansi story. Kwaku Anansi had two fingers of banana that he was going to share with his 2 sons. You know, said, look, I'm a generous father. So you take one and give me half. And you take one and give me half. At the end of the day, Kwaku Anansi had 1 finger of banana and his 2 sons had half each. That's the same Kwaku Anansi story we are being told. You understand? In any case, who in the public knows what benchmark value is? Customs, they don't publish their benchmark values. Have you ever? Do you know the benchmark value for clinker? Do you know? Do you know for anything? That these are figures that they use for administrative purposes, which they keep to themselves. So today, if you go to the port and they say that the benchmark value for plastics is 5 cedis, how are you going to challenge it? How are you going to know whether it has been reduced or not been reduced? How are you going to know? You understand? So this very simple common trick is used on us, and we are all dazzled. And so some people are dazzled and are making all kinds of noises. In any case, if it is true that we are blanketly, without discrimination, reducing duties on imports, what does that say for the development of building an export-driven economy? What does that say for it? One of the major things in any discussion of the economy has to do with power, electric power. One of the major things. Now, over the past couple of months, some say weeks, it's not weeks, it's months, we've been experiencing power outages. Sometimes 6 hours, sometimes so erratic and so on. But we've been experiencing power outages. When it got so worse, the first reason I got for the power outages was that there was a problem with some lines in the western region. And we are assured that in a couple of days, the problem will be rectified and we'll have regular supply of electricity. No problem. These things happen, accidents happen, and so on. And then it persisted. It went beyond days. We were getting into a week. The same people who told us that the cause of the problem was some power lines in the western region then quickly came back and told us that, oh, it's actually something to do with the Ofankor interchange. And that the Ofankor interchange was disturbing some power lines and so on. So there are two causes of the power outages. Why were we not told of the second one when we were being told of the first one? Then in a couple of days, we were told that actually, you know, the real problem is that gas from Etwabo is not available because Etwabo has shut down for routine maintenance. Hey, baby. Hold on. Hey, baby. Hey, na someone pony. Masa, me, I am not an engineer. I'm just an ordinary, simple journalist working in my Kukumemle office. But I happen to know that the Akosombo Dam does not need gas to function. Pong doesn't. The other one, what is it called? Bui, and so on. These are hydro power plants. You understand? Put that aside. I also happen to know that most of the generating plants that we have actually run on crude oil and gas. So if gas is not available, how does that affect crude oil supply? It doesn't make sense. I thought the foolishness was big enough at this stage. Then I had the misfortune of listening to one of the MPP communicators, very senior person, on radio. And I said, oh my goodness, this country is in big, big trouble. He said, we shouldn't worry at all. It is sabotage. Sabotage from the opposition. And that they went and pulled down one pylon somewhere in Tema. That is why we are not getting electricity. Hey! I've been to see the pylon. The pylon only tilted. All the wires are on it. The pylon only tilted because the bolts are not holding the base. Some of them were stolen. So that is why we are having doomsday for how many weeks? And, you know, the annoying thing is that they expect us to believe these stories. Do you know something with the Etwabo gas facility? We are not being told that it's being shut down for maintenance as a result of an accident. They say it's planned shut down. Routine. Something that we have known long ago. I was listening to John Jinapo, who was the former deputy minister in charge of the sector and so on. And I was saying that in instances of plant shutdown, the gas plant gives notice, and the notice I've heard have ranged from 1 month to 6 months, and so on. So if you have 6 months notice that the gas plant is going to shut down, why can't you make alternative arrangements? And so on. But you know, something we should all be paying attention to. From what I know, from what I'm hearing, and from what I am reading, the level of indebtedness in the power sector is huge. Huge. The last time I checked, and last time, this is some years ago, the Volta River Authority alone, its indebtedness when it comes to fuels and so on, was around $300 million. Very low. A troubled gas plant. I attended a press conference organized by they themselves. And they were telling us, the innocent poor journalists, that they are owed 500 million. 500 million, oh. Master, they listen? 500 billion, and so on. Now, it is because of this crippling power sector debt that the John Mahama administration introduced what they call, is it ESLA or what? Yeah, ESLA. Yeah. Energy sector debt recovery, whatever, you know, so on. Yeah. And as a result of the accumulations which we were getting, they started paying off the energy sector debt in order to free these utility companies for them to give us excellent service, or near excellent service, or simply good service, and so on. The question is, what has happened to ESLA? Where is that money? Where is that money that the Ghanaian taxpayer contributed to minimizing or reducing the energy sector debt? Where is that money? That is the money which has been used as collateral for bonds, for more loans. Ally? That's the money which has been used as collateral for more loans. Indeed, listening again to John Jinapor, if John Jinapor is mistaken, I'm mistaken. The energy sector debt in 2 years has risen by 2 billion. 2 billion in 2 years. And it is still climbing. So what is all this? The other claim which I hear, which knocks me off my feet completely, is the claim that, oh, you know something? In the past, the city was depreciating by 40%. Today, it is not depreciating by 40%, it's depreciating by a lower percentage. I said, is it the fault of my mathematics teacher? Is it that I can't think well? Or somebody is trying to pull a fast one on me? Do you know, and I'll give you just arbitrary figures. Do you know that 30% of 200, 30% of 200 can be much, much higher than 15% of 600? So what figures are we talking about? You understand? What figures are we talking about? I mean, it's incredible. And then the attempt to manipulate words is shocking. You come to us, your eyes are wide open, your brain is still ticking. You understand? And then you make a profound statement that if your fundamentals are weak, your exchange rate will expose you. What can this statement mean? This statement means that when your currency starts depreciating, it's an indication that your fundamentals are not doing well. In any case, is the rate of inflation not part of the fundamentals? In any case, the rate of depreciation of the cedi, is that not part of the fundamentals? What do these people take us for? And then now you come and then you say, oh, what I actually meant is that when your leg is broken, it can be caused by different things. But your leg is still broken. You can still can't walk. The cedi is still depreciating. So, what are you talking about? And then, you know, I've always had a great deal of respect for Mr. Kwame Pieni. Great deal of respect. But my respect is growing. It's growing. Since this crisis, he's one of the few Ghanaians saying things that make sense. Now, fortunately, he's not an NDC member. He never has a CPP card. He's available for consultation. He's a member of the NPP. Why are they not consulting him? And he's making the right statement. He says, look, from long time ago, the methods we are using to arrest the cedi have been used over and over. We are getting the same results. It's time to change. And he's saying that people don't eat words. You can manufacture all kinds of words. That's not what the people are going to feed on. And that it is time to change the fundamental structure of the Ghanaian economy. What can be more sensible than this? We are sinking. Petroleum prices have gone up by 30%. People are now paying more for the education of their wards than indeed when there was no free SHS. And go and check. Because of this red, green, and so on colors and so on, people are now compelled to take their children to extra classes. I'm sure you've heard the fees. Some are paying 500 cedis a month. Some are paying 800 cedis a month to send their children to these extra classes and so on. Why? Those parents, do you think that they are more relieved now than when before free SHS was introduced? So let's get real. Let's discuss the issues. And then this one there, Charlie Massa, if it doesn't blow your mind, then Charlie, your mind is something powerful. Listen, last week, the finance minister went to Parliament and said, look, the time has come for everybody to come on board. So we want a bipartisan approach to the resolution of the economic crisis which confronts us. 1 week later, the vice president says that the people who want to come and sit with us to discuss the economy to find solutions, they are actually useless. They are so incompetent that you can't do anything with them. Now, if they are that useless, why are you inviting them to come and discuss the economy and to find solutions to the problems which confront us? Hey, what is this? You know that they are so useless. They are incompetent. They don't know anything. They are liars and so on. And we have given you the mandate to run our economy. And you say, I'm going to share that mandate with incompetent people. What do you take us for? The people who only last week, you were begging to come and join you, to find solutions to the problems of the economy, in less than 1 week, have become incompetent, useless people? Master, do you understand this? Me, sometimes I don't. Look, that call on the minority to join the discussions and so on is worthy. It has some merit and so on. And I was hoping against hope that it will happen. Not because I expect any fundamental solutions to come out of that, but at least it gives us the assurance that different viewpoints are being consulted and so on, and that eventually all of us will find the true solution to the problem. Do you know what the problem that is afflicting us now? This is a crisis of capitalist development. It's not about all the things they are talking about. It's a crisis, fundamental crisis of capitalist development. It's the neoliberal path to economic development which has brought us here. You understand? So if you go and bring, I was going to say Adam Smith, but it might be misconstrued and so on.
You can use John Maynard Keynes.
And all of these discredited economists, who will revive them again? Keynes' theory, the Keynesian principle, has long been discredited. You know, people are still reading 1946 books. That's where we are. We are in 2019, and people are still reading economic books written in 1940s and 1950s and so on. Most of the theories have been discredited already. The Keynesian theory, which says that the more your population, the less developed you can become and so on, it's been shattered to smithereens. Me, I'm not an economist, but I know this. Master, let's leave it here.
Thank you, Mr. Pratt. I'll come back to Mr. Mould shortly. But let me just read a couple of the messages you are sending to our Facebook platform. Well, Charles Nyame Asamankesi again says, so now, okay, I think it's the same thing that he sent earlier. Mahamadou Zangina says, hi Radio Go, it's great news that the MPP has done better in every sector, including corruption, thieving, hooliganism, and clearing criminal acts under their noses. Bravo to Nana Baumia and their clique. Ibrahim Musa Mensan says, we can compare by looking at money received and the physical structures that have been developed, which is to give relief for the people. These things are quite difficult to assess, and Ibrahim Mensah again says that. So how would Adongo's exposure be broken into the local language for the people at the rural areas to understand? Charles Thompson says, so long as kleptocratic and kakistocratic officials run the show in corrupt reading Ghana, our beloved country will continue to develop at a snail pace. Calls it kumocracy of the highest order. And Patrick Caron says, I think there's and that has to do with the difficulties on our radio channel. Eric OW says, without Kufuor took the growth rate from 3.7% to 9.2%. With all under the early stages of NDC jump to 14.2%, only for the incompetent Mahama government to collapse it to 3.4% with all. These are the people going to lecture us on the economy and Okwa. And let me come to you, Mr. Mould. Well, my producer is within the mic, his mic on. Okay, come on.
Well, I think Kwesi Pratt has really set the tone for us to really understand what the average Ghanaian really wants from a government. The average Ghanaian is no fool. The average Ghanaian listens to the promises any government makes on the campaign trail. And the average Ghanaian really looks to see what they can really do. There are promises on one side, and then there are what really can you do given the tools that you have, given the resources that you have. No government is going to come in place and be, a wizard, be able to take a wand and resolve the problems of this country in a short while. But any management team, any CEO that takes over a business, and government is a business, anybody who does that first has to do a situational analysis. You see, when you are not in government, you don't have all the facts, you don't have all the information and you really don't know what the previous government has put in place till you actually get there. And that is one of the things I think as a country we need to change. We need to let the people of the country know the true situation of the country, not by throwing numbers and lag indicators, things that really are not reflecting what's going on, manipulated data, as Kwesi has mentioned, by rebasing and not having apples for apple comparison. I think we need to be true to ourselves, and especially when you're in government, you need to be true to yourself of what the situation is and really what you're doing to improve the situation. Because the people of Ghana or any country vote a new government to come in to take them to a better place. And the people are looking at, very basic indicators. They're not looking at your inflation or your GDP or any of that. They are looking to see, as Kwesi said, do they get the basic necessities? Are they able to afford, a meal for the day or meals for the day? Are they able to send their children to good schools knowing that their wards will be taken care of in these schools just the way they would like to take care of their wards at home? Being given the right education, making sure that the teachers that we are entrusting our children to have the right tools and the resources to carry out their duties. You see, any organization, be it, a multinational organization, be it a local organization, an NGO, a radio station, a school, a hospital, any organization, a football team, if you do not have the right resources, if you do not empower your people to do the right things, you can never be a high-performing organization. Without microphones, without things, how can Radio Gold really function? And we expect the teachers of this country to outperform. Are we setting a low benchmark for them and saying they're performing? Or are we setting a world-class standard for teachers and schools? If that is the case, what sort of standard do the people of Ghana expect from their government? And I think it needs to be very clear, to any government that comes to govern this country, what is the expectation? Your manifesto and the rhetoric during campaigning is one thing. Maybe you want to excite the population, but the population is no fool. We actually know what you can do and what you can't do. So for me, I think it's important that the government goes back to basics. Luckily for them, the previous government gave them handing over notes. Now, when you are a CEO of an organization and you receive handing over notes, first of all, you should make sure you understand those handing over notes. You sit with your predecessors and ask questions to get a clear insight of the situation. Once you have a clear insight of the situation, you then are able to develop a roadmap of how you're going to achieve the goals that you had promised the people. You there are able to now put a finger to what you can do and what you can't do in your manifesto. You have to then communicate that to your team as to what really can be done. You cannot do politics in running an organization. You can do politics outside running the organization, but you cannot do politics when you're running the organization. The organization is Ghana. Once you enter and you are the CEO of Ghana, the president of Ghana, the management team you put in place is the management team of Ghana. It's no longer the management team of your party. And you have to now ensure that you have your back channels where you can consult with people in various other parties who are the embodiment of the government. You should be able to understand and use the resources that they have at your disposal. But you can only do this if people believe that you are behaving as a true government for all the people. The real question is, what promises were made? And what do Ghanaians really expect of this government, or any government, despite the promises? And how are they faring? How is the government faring with respect to its key deliverables? And the key deliverables is not what is in your manifesto. It is what the people of Ghana expect from you. First of all, you have to address the basics before you move on to things that are nice to have. Okay? Then you move on to things that, yes, if everything is equal, you then can acquire. So, the situation analysis of the country will tell you whether the country and whether the machinery you have, which include the public sector, is fit for purpose. Is it fit to take you through the journey that you have put in place? And if it's not fit, then how do you fix that? You cannot progress to do something without fixing the situation. So any good CEO and his management team, worth their salt, would know that they will have to consult with people who can help them get there. And this includes, the actual people who make the country work. The industry people, the businesses, big businesses and small businesses, the investors who actually invest, the financial institutions who are actually holding the debt of this country. You have to consult with all of these people to see what the challenges they are facing and what you're facing, and what you have to do to make sure you can get this done. The government is going to be judged on what the people believe the promises were. So the question now is, and that is why His Excellency Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia had this town hall. He is managing the expectations of the people. He is trying to let the people believe that the government is performing well. And the benchmark he's using is not what is expected of them, but what the past government did. When in any organization, the benchmark or the performance indicators you will be judged on for what you're doing is not what you did last year, but what is expected of you this year. I think they need to be very realistic as to whether they have performed or underperformed, and whether the people of Ghana believe that they have achieved what they said they would do, or whether they are underachievers. There's a difference between underperformance and underachievers. Underachievers is when a lot is expected of you and you did not do it. And underperforming is when you were given something to do and you did not do it. So an underachiever is when you, the person, is expected, much more is expected of you because you have a better team, you have a better, more resources, you have this, you have that, you have something that, the others did not have. And as Kwesi has said, yes, they did have, or they do have far more resources than the previous government. There are a lot of things that are in their favor. So more is expected of them. I think the biggest albatross for the government is, revenue and spend on the government wage bill, power and fuel prices, and the sustainability of these things have not been achieved as much as was promised. How do they get the sectors more efficient? I think that also there has been an underperformance. And how do you attract investments, both by local and foreign direct investments? How do you stabilize the the cedi vis-a-vis its main trading currency, which is the dollar? And how do you ensure that businesses thrive by instituting measures to bring down the interest rate of the country? And the last one, of course, is inflation. And as Kwesi said, we have to be true to ourselves what inflation is. If we change the basket, we change the goalpost. But inflation to the common man is a very simple thing. You see, buying kenke and fish at the same price, or as he did a few years ago, or is it more expensive now? Yeah, when he goes to market to buy his basket, which he's going to cook for the week, has that price gone up? When you go to the petrol station and you're buying fuel, has the price gone up? Vis-a-vis your purchasing power. And those are the things that I believe are the benchmarks of which every government will be judged. I think the government needs to come to a realization that it is underperforming in the eyes of the people. Exactly, and they need to put in what we call a performance improvement plan. Performance improvement plan basically brings you back on track. But if they believe they are on track, they will not put in a performance improvement plan. But the people of Ghana will put a performance improvement plan for you when it comes to an election. And the performance improvement plan then means they will bring somebody else to do your job. I think that it is quite important that the government comes to a realization that they need to put that in, and they need to fix things as quickly as possible, because things can spiral. And the reason why things can spiral, for example, in the foreign exchange, is if speculators come into the market and believe that the cedi actually is not worth as much as it is worth, they will start selling the cedi and buying the dollar. And that will cause the cedi to spiral further. With regards to the energy situation, my friend Kwesi has already reiterated his disgust in the untruths that have been spoken. I think he is right to say that this planned maintenance, if it was a planned maintenance, was known long ago. Planned maintenance are in budgets. budgets are approved in November, December. So any planned maintenance would be known, any tie-in of a gas pipeline to achieve a west to east flow would be known. It will be in the budget. It will be known exactly when it will happen. Any disruption also can be forecasted unless it's a catastrophic one. So basically, the government could plan, as Kwesi said, to fire alternate generation plants who use more expensive fuel. And the way it works is you will fire plants that use the cheaper fuel first to achieve, a lower price. And then you start firing the more expensive ones. The John Mahama administration did bring in enough thermal generation plants. We also have the hydro, which my understanding is we are firing all our hydro, on all cylinders, which is not the optimal way of managing your water reserves or the water resources. But we are doing that right now because that's the only way we can meet the demand. We put in a lot of effort in revamping most of the plants that were dilapidated due to lack of maintenance. This was done. And we also, through the ENI, Sankofa Jinyame project, worked with the World Bank to ensure that the gas that is produced from this field, because it is a take or pay gas, that gas has to be evacuated and be able to be paid for. So 4 new plants were supported by the World Bank to ensure this will happen. In the meantime, because these plants will take 3 to 4 years to come in place, emergency power was put in place as well. Some on term contracts and some with the option to buy them. And this relieved the generation problem that we had. And remember, doomsaw is a phenomenon where you have a technical challenge and you have a financial challenge. And that is what was experienced in the earlier part of this century. It required a lot of investment in the technical area, and it also involved some financial engineering and some financial discussions on how we can pay the debt in the power sector. ESLA was put in place, as we all know, in 2015. There was a rollout plan on how to pay the ring-fence debt by raising money against the ESLA flows. Part was done in 2016, and in the handing over notes, it was very clear how that was supposed to be used over a period of time to pay down the ring-fence debt, with the hope that you and I who buy fuel and you and I who are paying that levy in the fuel price as a subsidy to pay off the ring-fence debt that accrued mostly government not being able to pay its share of its use of power, that in some time in the future that levy will go off and the consumers of petrol will gain that relief back. To date, I have not seen nor heard how much has been actually raised from the fuel for ESLA, how much has been raised in debt. So the total income with regards to ESLA and how much has been used by ESLA to defray the ring-fence debt. So we don't know what the position of the ring-fence debt is. And secondly, we don't even know if that ring-fence debt, the cutoff time for the ring-fence debt has been changed and new debt has been added to it. And the question is, if there has been new debt in the power sector, why is there new debt in the power sector? I think the PURC and the Ministry of Energy should come very clear to the people of Ghana as to whether the institutions in the whole value chain of the power sector are profitable. Now, there's a difference between profitability and your ability to have liquidity to run your firm. So with regards to profitability, are they receiving or are they billing more than what they are actually consuming? The next thing is, are they efficient in collecting the money? Because everybody knows if you have an organization you're running and you bill the person for 100 cedis, the item you billed him for costs 80 cedis, but you only collected 60 cedis. You have made a profit of 20 cedis, but you don't have any cash to support it. So you have to go to the banks to borrow. So we have to also look at all the SOE organizations within the value chain to find out what is their current standing with regards to the loans that they're taking. Have they taken new loans to support the losses that they're making, or taking new loans to support their balance sheet, or what people owe them that have not paid? And who are these people who owe them? Is government still owing in the power sector? We know that Ghana Gas is owed something around $750 million. Out of that, GNPC is also owed, and government is also owed some money. Why will the shareholder of Ghana Gas, I don't know whether it's GNPC or Ghana government, but the shareholder of Ghana Gas allow it to be owed $750 million? Something doesn't sound right. Somebody is not doing the right thing. If we do not take care, Ghana Gas will fall in the same predicament that we found Tema Oil Refinery. I think we, as a country, need to really insist that the management of these organizations run them more efficiently, and the board members who are put there understand that their responsibility is not to the shareholder but to the company. Many a times you have a conflict where the shareholder gives instructions to the management team or gives instructions to the board. And because of the fear of their lives that they will be fired, they take those instructions which are actually detrimental to the organization and detrimental to the whole value chain, especially in the power sector. I think going forward, there has to be better planning, especially from the organizations. They have to inform all stakeholders of shutdowns and what will be required. If we have enough generation capacity, and we do have enough generation capacity, we may even have a little more than expected by the year 2022 when all these plants come in place. If the demand doesn't go up, because these plants were put in place based on projections of demand, and demand will only go up if we have large industries coming into the country to consume the power. If we do not put things in place, have enough generation capacity, have better planning, ensure that we have the financial wherewithal to be able to get our financial institutions to support the working capital needed to buy fuel, to fuel the plants on a timely basis. If we do not do that, we are going to go back to what we refer to as doomsday. I am hoping that the government has learned their lesson. I am hoping that they will work with the technical people. They will listen to the technocrats. They will have as much information as they have to work to ensure that if they require some support from government with regards to opening letters of credit, mainly because government has put their balance sheets in jeopardy and their inability to actually raise the letter credits on their own will require support from government. I am hoping that the government would have a team in place to ensure that this doesn't happen again, to ensure that there are conversations with the financial institutions who support the energy sector, to ensure that we have a sustainable fuel supply mechanism, and we also have a plan in place to ensure that the operations and maintenance of all these power plants that are owned by government, and that the balance sheets of these organizations, the stress on these balance sheets are addressed as quickly as possible.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mould. And well, let's take a couple more of the messages before we go to our very second topic. Isaac Tete says, Honorable Kwesi is not an economist, but he's teaching people with PhD in economics. What real economics is? Thank you, sir. Nuruddin A. Habibu says, I'm just wondering, have we ever observed the country Dr. Baumia was managing as a leading economist? Is it Zambia or Zimbabwe? How was the country doing before you handled our dear nation to him? Ben Doku says, well, this one, Sewo Nui says, good morning, Senna. My prayer goes for Mr. Kwesi Pratt. May the good Lord strengthen him to live long. I love listening to him. I echo Mr. Pratt. He sent that from Kokofu in Kumasi. Raphael D. Who says, Ghanaians didn't vote you into power to compare yourself with the NDC. It's because they were not performing that we were voted into power. Just do what you promise, and that's what you'll be judged by. Well, so our second topic has to do with the education sector and some of the issues we've been seeing on social media, specifically having to do with the teachers being forced to write examination questions on chalkboards. I'll bring you Honorable Kujeto Ablakwa.
Senna, we must spare a thought for our teachers and for the state of the education sector generally in our country. The pictures we have seen that have been in wide circulation reflects the current state of education in our country. All of us are shocked, and justifiably so, that end of term examinations are being written, especially in the Ashanti region, the most populous region in Ghana, and where we have the most number of schools per official data. These end-of-term examinations are being conducted without printed examination papers. So what we have seen is that teachers have to go through the laborious process of writing out examination questions for basic school students on the chalkboard. Some of the pictures we have seen, teachers have had to require the aid of chairs. They're standing on chairs, standing on tables. There's one teacher who managed to secure a ladder, climb the ladder to write these questions. I have listened to the teachers on radio stations such as yours who have confirmed the pictures that we have all seen. And they have said that they had no choice in the matter. These exams ought to be conducted, and they had to provide the questions. Some of them say that by the time they finish writing all the questions, a lot of time is already gone. They eat into the official time for the exams. So if the examinations must start at 8:30, according to some of the teachers I have listened to on your network, on City FM and elsewhere, often by 9 a.m., 9:30 a.m., they are still writing all these questions. The sad part is that some of these teachers are having to grapple with the health challenges that this brings, because this is not a healthy development. Using chalk, burning down, and you notice that some of the writings continue even way beyond the blackboard. You have to start high up even before the blackboard begins, and so low when the blackboard has long been exhausted. Then you have to clean section A and come back and write the same process for section B. It's just punishing. It's just punishing. That cannot be quality education. I have listened to the unions, and the unions say that there was a GES directive that they are not allowed to collect printing fees from parents or guardians. What you do after you have issued such a directive is that you make the money available. The unions say that as we speak, capitation grant for the 2018-2019 academic year is in arrears. So government is not releasing funds for capitation grant. Government is not providing resources for examination papers to be printed. And yet, government does not want parents who can contribute a token for these examination papers to be printed. So, Senna, the other aspect of this that we are not talking about is the number of schools that have reportedly shut down because their teachers did not want to go through this very laborious and punishing ordeal of writing out examination questions. How many of these schools have been closed down? What is the fate of the students, the pupils of these schools? And these pupils are competing with students not only in private schools in Ghana, they are competing globally. Globally. We always must bear in mind that we are preparing the next generation to compete with their counterparts, their peers in Japan, in Singapore, in Malaysia, Denmark, Finland, those countries topping the PISA tests anytime it is done. Why do we put the next generation through this? Why do we put our teachers through this? This is unacceptable. And so far, you don't see any urgent attention being paid to this. I mean, this should be a scar on our conscience. This is a national disgrace that we shouldn't live with. The president should have moved in. Why are we not paying capitation grants? Under the NDC, under President Mahama, capitation grant was increased by 100%. And if you look at our record in the education sector, and I commend Professor Jenana Upukwajiman, my favorite boss of all time, for the great job she did. She did elaborate on some of these interventions when she took her turn during the panel discussion last Thursday. We saw education as a holistic area. In other words, your interventions must affect everybody in the education sector for there to be demonstrable progress and achievements. So one of the things we did was to identify districts that do not have education offices, district education offices. And by the end of 2016, at least 25 districts without district education office had been provided with newly constructed, well-furnished education offices. In Ga East, in Saboba, Kibi District Education Office, South Dai, Birim South, Lejekuku Krowo, Bandai, Seshua Kontombra, Shama District, Ketu North, Sechere Central, Kintampo South, Efija Kwabre, Nkranza North, Sola Tuna Kalba, Lambusie Kani, Kasina Nankana West, Gomoa East, Ewutu Senya, Golu, Asinfosu, Wasa Ekropon, Asesewa District Education Office, Esiwa, Duaya and Kwanta District Education Office, and then Kwanta District Education Office. Fully furnished, and listeners in these districts will confirm to you. We did not stop there. we carried out an inventory, took stock of the human resource situation, realized that there is a deficit in maths and science teachers. We recruited 2,400 well-interviewed, well-examined mathematics and science teachers, 2,400 of them. We introduced the Transforming Teacher Education and Learning Program, which was a 108 million CD intervention to improve the quality of teaching. Professor Opoku Ajiman talked about how our mathematics dons, Professor Anku, Professor Alote, God bless his soul, and others were brought on board in boot camps to retrain our maths and science teachers. We increased the teacher strength at the basic education level from 247,000 to 292,000. We provided vehicles. You saw the pickups, the buses that we provided. And these pickups for school heads, because you need to resource teachers, make them comfortable so they can deliver. Elsewhere, teachers, and that was Lee Kuan Yew's philosophy, that teachers train everybody else, and so they must be paid far more than everybody else. Politicians, engineers, pilots, lawyers, doctors, name them. I pray for the day Ghana will get there. But you could see under the NDC how we valued our teachers. Again, the records show that under President Mahama, we procured and distributed 54,400 laptops for basic school teachers. Laptops. Today, we cannot even find money to print examination questions. Under President Mahama, we provided laptops. I do not recall the last time I read anywhere or saw any news item that laptops are being procured for our teachers. 54,500 laptops for teachers. And then 60,000 laptop computers were distributed to public basic schools. We did not stop there. We continued to invest in infrastructure, beginning from early childhood care and development. And here, we provided 345 new KG classrooms, because prior to our coming to the ministry, basic education began from P1. We said it ought to be mainstreamed with early childhood care and development. So your KGs must be part of, when we talk about basic education, it should start from KG, from kindergarten. And we provided the infrastructure, constructed 1,347 new KG blocks. And this is data that we handed over with the full breakdown in our handing over notes to the Minister of Education. We provided 1,875 KG tables and chairs. We did all of these things. And you see the new KG blocks that were constructed across the country in places like Banda, Sakasaka, Sremanu, Janjin, Bole, Chogu, Kobriti, in Sechedumasi district, Wasamampong, Fumbusi, Grumani, Jakba, Dapuri, Nadoli, Wakwan, Kolu in the Zapsugu Tatale district. I can go on and on. And we came up with a child-friendly design. Because Professor Opoku Ajiman will always insist that, look, learning must be fun. Children like beautiful things. And so we came up with one unique, beautiful design and built these KG blocks across the country. And you should see them. President Mahama then introduced new social interventions. You remember the free sandals program. 2016, we distributed 40,000 made in Ghana sandals. manufactured at the Kumasi shoe factory. These days we don't hear what has become of the Kumasi shoe factory. We did not stop there. We continued with the free school uniforms program that Professor Mills, God bless his soul, introduced. For the 2015-2016 academic year, 787,485 school uniforms were distributed to pupils. And the records are there, the distribution list, the beneficiaries, the schools, all of that in our handing over notes. I don't recall the last time we saw free uniforms being distributed. It appears the Free Sandals program has also been abandoned. We identified needy students and supported them. I was talking about the capitation grant, which benefited 5.5 million pupils in 38,714 public basic schools. We increased the capitation grant by 100% for all 11,650 public basic schools in 75 deprived districts under the Ghana Partnership for Education project. They also received additional capital funding, a base grant of 800 cedis per school, 1,200 and 1,000 cedis depending on your level of assessment. So beyond capitation grant, we made funds available, minimum 800 cedis, for things like this at the basic school level. So whether the education system, and we think that now education, everything should be about just free SHS, and even that, look at the crisis with free SHS. Double track is what we have. And as Comrade Pratt said, we are paying more now on extra classes, on having to, parents who are busy working, both parents working, they have to pay additional hostel fees.
Okay.
I mean, why are we doing this to education? And you see, this dovetails into the discussion on the economy. No economy can transform without a well-trained, properly trained, well-educated human resource. It is human beings that will develop an economy, that will transform a nation. It is not natural resources. It's not gold, it's not oil, it's not diamond, it's not bauxite. It's your human capital. And so if we are toying with the next generation, the way we are doing, and what is even troubling, Senna, is the draconian way in which education management is taking place. Teachers speak up and immediately they are hauled, summoned to offices. Appointments are terminated. They are transferred. I mean, teachers must be your partners in developing the schools, in education management. They should not be scared of you. You should not be just, treading on their rights and refusing to give them a voice. And so you have seen what is going on. They can't speak, so they are writing their examinations and taking pictures. You've seen some of the questions they are setting. There was a classic one I saw where the question the teacher said was that, write to the education minister, explaining to him, giving two reasons why, two effects of certain examination questions, two negative effects of certain examination questions on the chalkboard. I mean, so when your teachers are frustrated, your teachers are angry, you are not incentivizing them, you are not treating them with respect, you are harassing them, intimidating them, you are not providing them the resources they need. What kind of human resource are we training to help transform this economy?
Okay.
This is a national crisis, and I do hope that the government will rise to its obligations, this clearly cannot reflect an economy which is so buoyant, which is so strong, which is so healthy, when we cannot even provide resources for examination papers. And indeed, so many other things. Check the last time even textbooks were provided. By the time we were leaving office, we had changed the people to textbook ratio from a situation where 3 peoples had to manage with 1 textbook to 4 textbooks to 1 people. Total transformation. Now, what we are hearing from the field is that we are back to the dark days. With a quality education.
Okay, Honorable, thank you very much. Francis Ahofi on Facebook says, good morning, Sana. If your lies are ganganto and the living conditions of the ordinary Ghanaians will expose you, who the cap face should wear it. NPP should be aware that gone are the days where Ghanaians are enticed to vote a political party to power based on sweet talks and demagoguery without material gains. He sent that from Valley View. Ebukwashi says, my question is, did all the people in the economic management, okay, I think I've gone through that. Evangelist, okay, that one too. Stephen Odo says, I'm watching you live from Gumwa, the Rampon. Dr. Baumia is an economic comedian. He lied about the CD. It is now 5 CD 61 to the dollar. Yet he had the impetus to say his West is the best of the NDC. Well, for his boot for Chalewate comment, we have Kumasi Shoe Factory to show. When is he also going to show his Chalewate factory for the $75 billion he has borrowed in just 2 years? No wonder he is the head of a comedy management team that presided over purchasing of condoms worth $39 million from India. Ni Kalbenzi says, good morning, Sana, and your team, especially to Mr. Kwesi Pratt and Honorable Samuel Kujeto Ablako. I admire them so much, and I wish to bring 2 issues which are very disturbing. My kid brother came from school complaining bitterly about the standard of teachers brought to the school to teach. He says they are NAPCO graduates and lack the skill to teach them, and ever since they went to school somewhere in March, nothing has been taught. This is serious. Secondly, I personally wish to know how much resources was put into transforming the Lands Commission from the manual system to the digital system, which is currently being used. I wish to state that the software which was introduced has broken down and is not being used. I think journalists should investigate this matter because the taxpayers' money is at stake. Enjoy your program. Ni Adama from Amasama. Let me come to Mr. Moult on the issue of education.
Well, I think what Honorable Blakwa has said has covered most of the things that needs to be done, but like any organization, my background is running organizations that are in distress, bringing them back up. And I think you have to look at our educational sector from that perspective. You have to look at, how can you bring an organization that is in distress, that is where all indicators show that we are below the performance indicator that we want to be. What exactly is the situation in the sector? And it's very clear from what Honorable Ablakwa has said is, I believe the previous government, the NDC, John Mahama's government, put in place the infrastructure that is required. And I think the handover notes might have been very clear that they should continue rolling out the infrastructure. Infrastructure is important to ensure that the teachers and the students have the right atmosphere to actually achieve their objectives. You also have to look at whether your human resource is fit for purpose, whether they have the knowledge and they have the tools that they can do their work. So you can incorporate all of these best management practices in the public sector. These are best management practices that are practiced in high performance organizations. In the private sector, you can incorporate that in the public sector. Of course, you have to tweak it a little, but you can incorporate all of that. And I think you have to have a script of how you're going to do this. You have to be very real to yourself on the amount of money you can spend. But as a government, you have to decide what is important. And education, health, energy, these are very important and should be at the top of when you rank what you want to do with the resources you have. You have to put your resources where you will get the biggest bang. And the biggest bang, as Honorable Ablaku has said, is your human resource. The people who are going to do the work to bring this economy out are the future leaders. We have to ensure that we give them the education that is required in the right areas. Once we identify what is important to this country, do we have a shortage in the right areas? Do we have the right number of doctors? Do we have the right number of nurses? Do we have the right number of teachers? Do we have the right number? Are we churning is our educational system fit for the growth that we want in the country? Are we churning out the wrong people? Are we in terms of the wrong occupations? Do we have too many accountants? Do we have too many lawyers? Do we have too many engineers? Do we have too many people who are not going to really contribute to what we want as a nation to become? Are we training our artisans? Are we training our artisans properly? Do we have people who can form the bedrock of this country? And I think there has to be a critical look at that education. We cannot have a 4-year plan for education. Another government comes in, changes it. Education is a journey, and we need to be very serious on what is important for this country. I think that we should not abandon what the previous government has done just because maybe we don't want them to benefit from the praise that the population might give them. But we should emphasize why that was important and why we think what we're doing is also complements that. So we should be complementary in doing things. We cannot say, because one government did infrastructure, we're not going to do infrastructure because we said it's not important. No. And I think it has to be very clear what the plan is. The clarity is needed, especially in the education sector. The students and parents need to know that they can trust this education sector to achieve the goals that they want for their children. They also need to know that their children, once they go through this education sector, will get jobs. Okay? And these jobs will be well-paying jobs, so that these children can achieve their own goals in life and they can plan. I know that a lot of things have been put in place, especially the energy sector we were in, training people, looking to see how we can get them apprenticeships. We have to look at different sectors and how these sectors can be managed better with regards to supplying the human resource for the sectors. We should have that approach that what is our main goal? We are trying to provide human resources for various sectors. And are these human resources we are providing, do they have the basics that will be required in these areas? I remember when we looked at the input we were getting in the energy sector, there seemed to be some deficiencies. And the real question is, if you have a sector that is being supplied by another sector, which is the education sector, how can that sector help the education sector to achieve its goals? You just don't leave the education sector alone if you're the energy sector. And you say, well, they are supposed to give me the resources. And when they give me the resources, they are not good enough. And as such, I just blame the education sector. The energy sector has to work with the education sector to ensure that you are providing the human resources that are fit for the purpose that we want them. Otherwise, the easy way is we will spend money and send them abroad and train them and bring them back. Why not put those resources into the education sector and be a partner to the education sector and dictate to the education sector what you would like to see them produce for you. And as such, you also have to help fund that sector. So the private sector needs to start working with the government, especially on education, and be very truthful to them about things that are not working for them and how they would like to collaborate with them, especially from a financial point of view, how they're going to help them to get to where they want them to be. So I think, for me, it is very critical that the private sector and the public sector, the various sectors, including the power sector, the energy sector, the oil and gas sector, they know the sort of resources, human resource they need to do their work. So they need to go back and work with the education, whether it's a tertiary, secondary, to see how we can help them improve the final product which comes to us.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mould. Mr. Bratt.
Look, there isn't enough time. There's not much you can say in 4 minutes. But just to make the point that the fact that teachers now have to write exam questions on chalkboards is a retrogression. I mean, no matter what you do, we are walking backwards. And blaming teachers for this situation, accusing them of being sensational and so on, does not address that fundamental problem. Yes, we've introduced free SHS. Is that all that education is about? As a matter of fact, you can make education from cradle to grave free, teach students the wrong things, and create a huge problem for yourself. I mean, if you go to nursery schools today, they are still teaching them the rubbish that they taught me when I was in nursery school. They are still singing London's burning, look yonder. Useless. Absolutely useless and so on. Even for the secondary school system. Now we are not teaching them history as a standalone subject. That's a major defect, you understand? So we need to look at education in terms of, how we want our country to be. I mean, what kind of society do we want to build? If you don't answer the basic question of what society you want to build, you cannot be said to be developing education. Because education is supposed to be providing you with the manpower that builds that society. You understand? So I think that we need a real major shift in our educational policy to make education reflect the kind of society we want to build. The kind of society we are today, which is riddled with debt, in which incomes are not sufficient to pay for our needs and so on, is not the kind of society we want in the future. And we need to restructure education completely to be able to address that fundamental question. What kind of society do we want to build?
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Pratt. Just a couple of messages. This one is from somebody calling himself from Adafo Adam Smith. says a strong currency, which is something head of the economic management team is hoping, is a mixed blessing. It makes imports cheaper and can improve living standards. However, they can also make exports less competitive and lead to lower economic growth. See, a strong currency depends on economic fundamentals. What are our fundamentals? Do you know? Knowing well that to have a stronger exchange rate, Ghana need a combination of low inflation, productivity growth, economic and political stability. Political stability, yes, we have, but currently under threat. And the rest? And therefore, Adam Smith, Kwame Tewia, wants to know which of the two recently publicized economic forums by Wale Adam Smith and Simon Kuznets address issues regarding ways to strengthen our currency, the Ghanaian cedi. Did Wale Adam Smith really address the macroeconomic indices of Ghana, our economic growth rate real or artificial or none? What is Mr. Inflation rate looking? And almighty Madam unemployment rate. My brothers and sisters, are you happy with the economic status of our country? Is there a future? Can there ever be a future for our children and children unborn? That's from Kwame Tewia Rowe, Esquire. Let me also read one coming in from Stephen Kobnato. Says that I thought the NPP made us believe that when Bawumia PhD speaks on the economy, no one else has the power to comment. How come after he is done speaking, they are billing the finance minister who holds an MBA in management and not even an economist to speak after Bawumia? An admission that Wale Adam Smith performed abysmally. Very interesting. And then Koblavi of Pokwasi Benghazi says, from all indicators, the economy of our country is very sick and NPP government cannot do anything to revive it. Coupled with doomsor, NPP has brought a curse on Ghana. So I would like to thank you gentlemen for turning up on the program for today. Mr. Kwesi Pratt Jr. is the managing editor of the Inside newspaper. Alex Mould is a former chief executive officer of the National Petroleum Authority and the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation. Honorable Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa is ranking member on Foreign Affairs Committee, a member of Parliament for North Tongue, a former deputy minister for education. A big thank you. And a big thank you too for listening to us today. We are back same time next week.